Over the past 5 weeks, we have dove into the celebrated and often chaotic world of women in gaming. We've seen how women navigate the industry, usually having to work twice as hard to get half as far. Not only are these female gamers overlooked, but they continue to face hordes of misogynistic harassment, whether it is through coordinated movements like Gamergate or just from everyday trolls. However, there are signs of hope for change. The legacy of the Games for Girls movement and increased dialogue about the portrayal of female streamers and characters in gaming indicate a shift in the right direction. As more women find their footing in the industry and establish their own safe spaces and communities, the world of gaming is gradually becoming more inclusive. Welcome to Let the Girls Game, a podcast mini-series where we explore the history and stories of women in gaming powered by Let's Sing. I'm your host, Lauren Meisner, and for today, our final episode, we are discussing the future of gaming and how women will fit into the industry moving forward. And to help me dive into this massive topic, I am joined by MissDeusGeek. MissDeusGeek is an award-winning content creator and advocate for diversity in gaming. As an Xbox MVP, she actively promotes inclusivity, embodying the program's core values of diversity, safety, and fun in gaming. She also serves as a Women in Games ambassador and founded the nonprofit community group Women of Xbox, a global initiative dedicated to empowering female Xbox gamers. Alongside content creation and these ambassadorships, she founded Attack on Geek, an online entertainment hub sharing content on pop culture, gaming, and tech. So without further ado, please enjoy the final episode of Let the Girls Game.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for the great intro.
No, honestly, you are so well equipped to talk about this topic today. I'm so excited to hear your perspective on the future of women in gaming and what this industry can kind of look forward to. So, I guess just looking ahead to start right off the bat, what kinds of initiatives do you think will be most effective in promoting gender equality and inclusivity in the gaming industry?
It's a really good question, and I generally always go with two answers: education and representation. I think it's really important that we educate the masses around the importance of equality in every industry, not just in gaming, but specifically in gaming, educating the people that gaming isn't, it's not just for boys, it's for everyone. And having that representation through marketing activities, through advertising, through collaborations that you see brands have with influencers. It's all about seeing you represented by someone else. And I think being able to see that gaming is more than just a boys club, you're seeing, people from all walks of life, from all backgrounds, from all kind of gender identities. I think that's such a powerful way to really help change the space and make it more inclusive.
And how would you suggest, or from your own perspective, how do you think the gaming industry can improve its methods for gathering and implementing feedback from women gamers and developers to ensure this future progress?
Really, I think it's all about creating that safe space and having, the right tools to gather that feedback, whether that's through private Discord channels or through an online forum that is really going to allow women and female gamers to come in and feel safe exploring their feelings around these different situations that they're in, and really giving their positive feedback, and basically having that anonymity sometimes really helps as well, because the biggest thing when it comes to gaming as a female is the minute you put yourself out there, it's like, I'm gonna get crucified for being female. And so, I think having these companies having a space that these women and female games can go to, can, feel safe in sharing their feedback and then being heard as well. So having a forum, whether that's, an online panel or a virtual call like how we're doing now, having someone listen to the feedback is so powerful in itself. Just being heard is so powerful. So I think, there's a lot of ways that these brands can implement really easy strategies to just gather feedback and then take it in to their internal teams, having, step-by-step processes to ensure everything is implemented properly, because doing it like quick and simple usually just ends up blowing up in your face. You know what I mean? So I really think this is so important. It's so important for women to have these feedback channels to provide their feedback, and for brands and organizations to take that feedback and implement it in a systematic way that is sustainable long term as well.
Yeah, and just going back to your point that you made at the beginning of your answer when you mentioned how being a woman in gaming, it just comes with immediate issues, I suppose, if you're not anonymous. It's so interesting that you say that because we talk about gaming every once in a while on this podcast well, this is the mini series as part of a bigger podcast, Infinite Scrolls. So whenever I cover gaming or gamers, anything that's happening online, I'll post like a clip to TikTok, for example. And I would say, like 95% of my TikTok audience are women. And it will, of course, get pushed to a different algorithm. And my comments are flooded with men saying the most horrific things to me off of like a 1 15-second clip. I can't imagine what it would be like for women who are like actively engaging in this space so much deeper than I, am with just that little TikTok clip. I'm sure it's so scary. And even reaching out to the women for this podcast, I would say almost every single woman that we spoke to said they did not want to talk about certain topics out of fear, which is so horrible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had my fair share. Doing live streams in particular, where it's not a controlled environment, can be quite daunting. I was obviously had to train myself to just not look at the comments, or have really strong moderators to really help block that from my viewpoint, because it can really affect you while you're trying to live stream, or even just going into a community that is 90% male. It's always daunting because it's like, I don't know, I don't see any other women. I don't know how to conduct myself other than just being a regular gamer. And the minute someone says something that is inappropriate, it destroys that experience for you. And I think that's just so soul crushing in a way for someone like me who loves gaming, and I just want to talk to people who share my passion.
Yeah, totally. Well, to that point, what qualities or changes, I suppose, do you hope the next generation of gamers will bring to this industry? And kind of in what ways do you think that brands and companies can help facilitate those changes?
I think we're starting to see that shift already. The younger generation are more accepting and more open to having that diversity in gaming. I've seen young boys play with young girls on their Xbox, and it's just a case of, hey, we're just playing games together. So I think there's that movement is already happening through the younger generation, through kids who are a lot more open to just playing games for the fun of it. And I think there's a lot more acceptance in there being, diverse representation, whether that's through advertising. Instead of seeing a guy in a basement playing video games like in the old days, seeing gaming is a lot more fun. It's a lot more chic. You'll see like a female gamer with her Switch on the bus or something. It's a lot different now, and it's more accepted that that is the case. The way I see brands and organizations working to help foster this is really driving in on that representation. Having diverse characters in their games, having diverse storytelling and narratives, taking away that stereotype that a female character in a video game has to look like the old school Tomb Raider. It's not about sexualizing and fetishizing these women characters, female characters. It's about just making stories that people can really relate to, having female characters that look just like me, or someone who comes from a very different culture. It's just regular people having stories and experiences that we can all share. So I think that's I mean, I would like to think that that would be the way forward. And of course, going through working with like NGOs, or going to schools and educating young children around gaming is for everyone, and best practices when it comes to collaborative gaming. I think tapping into those young minds at an early age is really important. They already have that mindset anyway, so it's not going to be very hard to try and shift that focus. So I am very hopeful for the future of gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess given that you hold, numerous ambassador positions, do you see mentorship programs, in the gaming space, whether that's from a development perspective or even just teaching, women about gaming, young girls about gaming, like you were saying, do they exist to begin with? And if not, do you see that moving forward?
They definitely exist. I know brands like Xbox do have mentorship programs that they've rolled out, not just within their environment and their ecosystem, but they've actually opened it up to, community members, regular gamers who just want to learn how to empower themselves. There was a movement around women in gaming at Xbox as well. And so it's all about fostering and educating and empowering and supporting women who want to be in the gaming industry, whether that's as a developer or in marketing or whatnot. There's definitely plenty of organizations out there that are specifically targeting female gamers to help them feel like they belong, help them see that representation, and have someone who's done it already talk to them about their journey and share with them the tips and tricks of how to make it in the industry. I think it's something that there is a lot of, but I think there needs to be a lot more conversations around it, like what we're having now, because I don't think a lot of young girls out there realize that there are these mentorship programs, that there are these career development programs hosted by women for women. And, having these conversations, having brands publicize it a lot more, having allies talk about it as well. We've got a lot of male allies who can talk about it, who can talk to their young girls about it. I think that's really important to see a lot more of.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the biggest probably challenges in this space becoming more inclusive and finding that representation would be probably around the language that is used to, I don't know, whether that's to attack women or to speak about women in the space, or even the way that women feel like language is weaponized against them. Do you see a shift in how people are starting to, or the community, I suppose, is starting to speak about and use language about women in gaming? And what do you see for the future of that?
I think it's still in that sort of muddy waters kind of area right now, because whilst there's a lot of positive language being used, there is still that vocal minority, I like to call them, still using language that might be a bit inappropriate when it comes to talking about female gamers. And there's a lot of online harassment and things like that. I think there needs to be that moderation tools, having those safe spaces, having people from the top down talking positively about these inclusive practices, maybe offering incentives to have people be more positive about diversity and inclusivity, and showcasing that gaming is really, like I mentioned before, is for everyone through their games, the design of the games, making it more realistic, making it more accessible to people, opening it up to people who potentially don't have access to video games. So for example, having I go back to Xbox because I live and breathe the brand, but Xbox have opened up their games to a variety of platforms beyond just a console. So now a gamer in Asia who doesn't have a console, but they have a PC, can play games that they never could before. So I think all of this goes around accessibility, that push for more inclusivity, that push for more community. Because I think once you have that community feel, and that's where people start to realize, like, we all speak a different language, but in gaming, we speak the same language. And I think that's going to help foster a more positive feel and change the way people speak about female gamers.
Do you think there needs to be more onus on the, I suppose, platforms that are maybe not taking moderation as seriously?
100%. I think that, at the end of the day, these online platforms really are cultivating the negativity that can happen online. And so having really strong, robust moderation systems, having, strong policies against harassment and toxicity online. There's a lot of things like deep fakes and all of that have been posted online. There needs to be some sort of system to identify these things and immediately cut it out, whether that's through a human doing it or an AI doing it. There needs to be more impactful methods put in place to make sure that the online space, regardless of what platform, is a safe one for everyone.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about platform moderation and that whole topic because I really believe that it's some of these platforms have grown too big for even themselves to be able to control or contain. So it would cost way too much money for them to put in like the proper moderation that actually needs to happen. And so it's really, like you were saying before, it has to come from the top down. Like there has to be proper legislation put in place to force them to do that until they'll spend that money. And unfortunately, the people making the legislation and all the laws and things around this, usually you have no idea what's going on. So we're kind of at this very, I think, bizarre crossroads right now in technology and social media. But speaking to AI, as you mentioned, I wanted to talk about, I guess, the future of gaming in relation to AI, because you really can't talk about the future of anything in tech without talking about AI. So I'm curious how you think AI will influence gender inclusivity specifically in games. And do you think that there are risks that AI might reinforce gender stereotypes?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, it can go both ways. You can really utilize AI to pick out toxic behaviors and toxic language and make sure that, it is gotten rid of right away in terms of that moderation tools. But on the flip side, AI is still programmed by someone. And so at the end of the day, it really depends on what is that person's mindset going in and programming the AI? Do they have their own biases? And therefore, does the AI, you know, have minimal things to pull from in terms of being more open and more inclusive and all of that? So it's a really interesting space. And I don't know what the right answer is, because AI is still whilst it's very powerful, it's still that gray area where we don't really know what can happen. And relying on it 100% might not necessarily be the best way. But at the same time, it just helps cut down the time involved for a human, let's say, to go in and check every report that's been made or flagged for harassment and toxicity and all of that. So it's a hard one. I'm not really sure how I see it at this stage. I'm still sitting back and being cautious about it all. I know that unfortunately with AI as well, there's a lot of possibilities for deep faking and creating technologies that might actually hurt people in the long run. So yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just cautiously waiting and seeing.
I think that's kind of all we can do, right? I think even the people developing this tech are probably in a similar space, whether they want to believe it or not, where it's has so much amazingly positive potential, but also so much unfortunately negative potential. Okay, so to finish off this interview, but also just this entire series, I mean, we've spoken a lot about the future of gaming and what needs to happen and kind of where you see things being positive in the future. What emerging challenges do you foresee for women in gaming, and how do you think the industry can proactively address these issues?
I think the big one really is around that online toxicity and the cybersecurity challenges that come with being online. And I think really it's all about having those robust moderation tools, having strict guidelines and policies around what can and can't be done on those platforms, and having swift action. When someone reports something, it really needs to be addressed as soon as possible, because the longer things stay online, the faster it can get disseminated. And so I really see those two things as being the really big challenges that women can face. And I think a lot of education around privacy, security, how to conduct yourself online, all of those things are going to be really important, because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people who don't realize that there are some things you can and can't do online.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wrap on this mini series, Let the Girls Game. Thank you so much to my amazing guests over the last 5 weeks who have shared their stories, their challenges, and their triumphs with us. Thank you so much to Let's Sing for helping us bring this mini series to life and platforming these stories that are just so important to talk about. And thank you to you, our listeners, for coming along on this journey with us for the last 5 weeks. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And if there's one thing I hope you took away, it's that women and gender diverse people deserve a safe space to be part of the video game community, to have fun, to express themselves, and to simply play without fear of harassment, judgment, or sexualization. That's it for Let the Girls Game. If you liked this mini series, please leave us a review. It would mean so much. I love you guys. And until next time, let the girls game.